A medical examiner's van leaves the area where a large law enforcement investigation is happening. This location is only a few miles from where missing USF doctoral student Zamil Limon's body was found 2 days prior. His friend, Nahida Bristy, is still missing. Law enforcement officials would not confirm what they are searching for or what they may or may not have found, but investigators were seen bringing large bags from a wooded area along the water.
Two students vanished within 1 hour. They were young. They were smart. And they trusted the wrong person. At first, nobody understood what was happening. Their phones suddenly stopped moving. Their families could not reach them. Their friends became worried. Then police made a disturbing discovery near a bridge in Florida. One body was found. Days later, another victim was discovered in the water. Investigators soon uncovered a dark story hiding inside an apartment shared by friends. What really happened to Zamil Limon and Nahida Bristy? And why did two successful students suddenly disappear without warning? Stay until the end because this case becomes more disturbing the deeper investigators looked. You're watching True Crime Dead Signal, where every silence hides a secret, and every signal tells a story. Subscribe now for real true crime cases, disturbing mysteries, and unsolved investigations uploaded regularly. Let's begin. Before investigators uncovered the disturbing details of this case, two young doctoral students were living normal academic lives at the University of South Florida. Their names were Zamil Limon and Nahida Bristy. Both students came from Bangladesh and moved to the United States to continue their education and build successful futures. They were known within the university community for focusing heavily on their studies and spending most of their time working toward academic goals. Friends and classmates described both students as intelligent individuals who stayed busy with research projects, classes, and long hours of studying. Their sudden disappearance later shocked many people because there were no early signs that something dangerous was about to happen. Zamil Limon was studying as a doctoral student while also balancing responsibilities connected to university research and daily life in Florida. Like many international students, he had left behind family members, close friends, and familiar surroundings in order to pursue higher education abroad. People who knew him said he spent much of his time focused on schoolwork and future career plans. Investigators later discovered that Limon shared an apartment with another student, a detail that would become important later in the investigation. At the time, however, nobody viewed the living arrangement as suspicious. His routine mostly involved attending classes, working on assignments, and maintaining contact with relatives overseas. Nahida Bristy was also working toward advanced academic achievements at the university. Reports described her as hardworking and dedicated to her education. She had traveled far from home with hopes of creating better opportunities for herself through academic success. Students who interacted with her on campus later told investigators that she appeared focused on her future and spent much of her time balancing studies with personal responsibilities. She regularly communicated with family and maintained connections with people close to her. In the days before her disappearance, there were no public reports suggesting she feared for her safety or expected danger around her environment. As investigators later reviewed the backgrounds of both victims, they noticed similarities between their lifestyles. Both students were part of the international student community at the university. Both spent years working toward difficult doctoral programs that required intense study and long-term dedication. They lived far away from family support systems and relied heavily on friendships, classmates, and trusted individuals around them while adjusting to life in another country. Detectives also examined the social circles connected to both victims to understand how their lives may have crossed paths before the tragedy unfolded. The case quickly gained attention because of the unusual timeline connected to their disappearances. According to investigators, both students vanished within a short period of time. Friends became concerned after calls and text messages suddenly stopped receiving responses. At first, some people believed the victims might simply be busy or temporarily unavailable. However, concern increased when neither student appeared for normal daily activities. Family members overseas also struggled to reach them, creating additional concern as hours passed without communication. These early warning signs later became important parts of the investigation timeline. As authorities gathered information, investigators focused heavily on understanding the victims' final known movements before they disappeared. Detectives reviewed phone activity, transportation records, and security footage connected to locations near the university. They also interviewed classmates, neighbors, and people who had recently interacted with the victims. At this stage, police were still trying to determine whether the disappearances were connected or completely separate events. The investigation expanded quickly once evidence suggested both students may have encountered danger around the same period of time. The deaths of Zamil, Limon, and Nahida Bristy later became one of the most widely discussed criminal investigations connected to the University of South Florida. What started as concern over two missing doctoral students soon developed into a major homicide investigation involving forensic evidence, phone records, apartment searches, and criminal charges. Before investigators reached those disturbing discoveries, however, the victims were simply two students pursuing advanced education while trying to build successful futures far away from home. Their backgrounds became a major part of understanding how this case unfolded and why it later shocked both the university community and people following the investigation worldwide. On April 16, 2026, the normal routines of Zamil, Limon, and Nahida Bristy suddenly stopped. Earlier that day, both students were reportedly following their usual schedules connected to university life and personal activities. Nothing publicly suggested that danger was close to them. However, investigators later determined that both victims disappeared within a short time of each other, creating immediate concern once friends and relatives realized communication had suddenly ended. What first appeared to be delayed responses to phone calls quickly became a growing missing persons investigation after neither student could be located through normal contact methods. Friends later told investigators that one of the first unusual signs involved unanswered text messages and repeated phone calls going directly to voicemail. According to reports, both victims normally maintained regular communication with people close to them. When hours passed without responses, concern slowly increased among classmates and family members. At first, some people believed the students were busy or temporarily unavailable because of school responsibilities. As more time passed, however, it became clear that the silence was not normal behavior. Investigators later used this communication gap to help establish a timeline of the victims' final known movements. Authorities soon began collecting information connected to the victims' last activities before they vanished. Detectives reviewed surveillance footage from areas near the University of South Florida and examined electronic records connected to phones and transportation. Investigators attempted to determine where the victims had traveled, who they had spoken with, and whether anyone noticed suspicious activity before communication stopped. Police also interviewed individuals connected to the victims' social and academic circles. During this early stage of the case, investigators were working to understand whether both disappearances were connected or if separate circumstances were involved. As detectives continued piecing together the timeline, attention slowly shifted toward people who personally knew the victims. Investigators examined relationships, shared living arrangements, and recent interactions involving both students. One detail that quickly became important involved Zamil, Limon's former roommate. Authorities later focused heavily on this connection after collecting evidence they believed linked the suspect to the victims during the final known hours before they disappeared. Detectives examined movements connected to vehicles, apartment activity, and cell phone data to better understand what may have occurred during that period. Investigators later stated that digital evidence played a major role in reconstructing the final hours before the victims vanished. Phone records reportedly showed movement patterns and periods of inactivity that investigators considered suspicious. Detectives also reviewed location data and information gathered from nearby cameras and automated license plate readers. By combining electronic records with witness interviews and forensic evidence, authorities slowly developed a clearer timeline of events. This process allowed investigators to identify specific locations and movements believed to be connected to the case during the hours after communication with the victims ended. The disappearance of both students quickly attracted wider public attention once search efforts intensified. University students, local residents, and relatives overseas followed updates closely while waiting for answers. Investigators continued searching for physical evidence connected to the victims while trying to determine whether foul play was involved. During this stage of the investigation, police remained careful about releasing specific details publicly. However, behind the scenes, detectives were already gathering evidence that pointed toward a disturbing situation involving people known to the victims rather than an unknown stranger. As the investigation moved forward, authorities became increasingly convinced that the final known hours of both victims contained critical evidence explaining what happened. Every phone call, text message, vehicle movement, and surveillance image became part of a larger timeline investigators used to reconstruct events step by step. Detectives believed the victims encountered danger shortly after their last confirmed communications. What began as concern over two missing doctoral students soon developed into a major criminal investigation centered around forensic evidence, digital tracking, and the actions of individuals closely connected to the victims during the final hours before they disappeared. As investigators continued searching for Zamil, Limon, and Nahida Bristy, the case quickly changed from a missing persons investigation into a homicide investigation. Detectives spent days reviewing evidence connected to the victims' final known locations, phone activity, and personal relationships. The breakthrough came when authorities discovered a body near the Howard Franklin Bridge in Florida. Investigators later confirmed the victim was Zamil Limon. According to court records, the discovery immediately raised serious concerns because investigators believed the condition of the scene suggested foul play rather than an accident or natural cause. Detectives then intensified efforts to determine what had happened during the hours before his disappearance. Authorities later revealed that Zamil Limon suffered multiple stab wounds. Court documents also stated that investigators believed he had been restrained before his death. These details caused detectives to focus heavily on reconstructing the sequence of events leading up to the killing. Investigators examined nearby areas for surveillance footage, vehicle movement, and possible evidence disposal locations connected to the bridge. Search teams worked around the area while forensic specialists collected physical evidence that could help identify everyone involved. Investigators believed critical answers were hidden within the victims' final known movements and the actions of individuals closely connected to them. As legal proceedings continue, many people still examine the timeline of events, the evidence collected by authorities, and the unanswered questions surrounding the investigation. What began as the disappearance of two doctoral students ultimately became a criminal case followed by audiences across different countries, leaving behind an investigation that continues drawing attention long after the initial discoveries were made. And that's where today's case ends, but the questions remain unanswered. What do you think really happened? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this investigation, make sure you subscribe to True Crime Dead Signal and turn on notifications so you never miss another case. Until next time, stay aware, stay curious, and remember, every signal tells a story.